There is a silent map on the ground under every old white oak, a map that tells you where the biggest whitetail buck walks today, not next week, not next month. Today, long before the sun rises. Old woodsmen read this map every single fall for 200 years. They named it the Mast map. Then the feed corn industry buried it. Modern hunters now spend thousands on food plots and trail cameras, and still miss the one thing whitetail deer have always obeyed fully: the acorn, the most powerful silent signal in all whitetail woods. This is the story of the forgotten acorn map and why it still works. Welcome to this channel, Hidden Hunter, Wyatt himself speaking now. If you hunt whitetail and value real old woodscraft, subscribe here. This is where buried American hunting knowledge comes back to life. Let me take you back to the cold autumn of 1892 itself. Deep in the Appalachian ridges of eastern rural Tennessee woods, a mountain hunter named Ezra Calhoun filled his buck tag every fall. He never owned a trail camera. He never planted a single food plot. He walked the oak ridges before dawn and read the ground silently. He looked at the cracked caps and the chewed-out acorn holes closely. He looked at the fresh deer tracks pressed beside the heavy drops, and he knew exactly where the buck would stand at first cold light. Calhoun called this skill reading the mast. His sons learned it too. His grandsons were reading oak ridges by the time they were 10. By the 1930s, the Appalachian woods was full of hunters, men who could walk a ridge at dawn and find the buck within an hour, not by luck. By reading the pattern of fallen acorns on wet leaves, they knew which oak trees dropped early and which ones dropped late. They knew white oak acorns were sweet and red oak acorns were bitter. They knew whitetail hit the sweet white oaks first and hit them hard. They knew the red oak mast carried deer through the late cold weeks. This was common woodscraft in every hunting cabin from Maine south. Ozark hunters used it. Ohio Valley hunters used it. Pine Belt men, too. The old-timers checked the mast crop in late August every single year. They walked the ridges and counted green acorns still on the limbs. A heavy acorn year meant deer stayed close and died close to home. A weak acorn year meant deer ranged far, and the season ran long. Then the outdoor industry arrived with a different product to sell. This video is only scratching the surface of the real buried craft. I collected everything modern outdoor culture buried and hid away. All of it lives inside the complete forbidden hunter's vault now. Ghost scent methods that make whitetail miss what they should detect. Silent stalking mechanics old hunters used without saying a word. Forgotten whitetail funnel logic that changes how you read the woods. Hidden camp tricks that keep your presence off the fresh deer ground. Blood trailing signs most modern hunters walk right past every fall. 8 powerful modules in one place. No fluff, no fantasy gear talk. The link sits right at the top of the video description down below. But stay here with me. The real woodscraft is just barely starting. Here is where the real science makes the industry silence obvious. A mature white oak drops over 10,000 acorns in one fall season. That is roughly 400 pounds of raw food under one tree canopy. A single whitetail doe needs near 5 pounds of forage every day. One heavy white oak feeds a small deer herd for nearly 3 months. The Quality Deer Management Association confirmed this in studies. White oak acorns carry about 6% tannin in the raw hull coat. Red oak acorns carry nearly 10% tannin in the same state. That is why whitetail crack open white oaks first every single fall. Sweet mast drops first. Bitter red oak mast carries them through cold. A University of Tennessee study tracked marked bucks for many years. They found mature bucks shifted core area during the heavy mast drop. Some bucks moved half a mile from summer range to reach fresh oaks. That shift can happen in one single night or under one cold front. A food plot simply cannot compete with 400 pounds of protein. A food plot covers maybe 1 acre. A ridge of oaks covers many acres. The math destroys every corn feeder claim ever made on a product box. the Penn State School of Forestry studied whitetail feeding patterns. They found acorns made up over 70% of fall whitetail diet. 70% in mast heavy years on forested land with hardwoods. No food plot on earth holds that kind of pull over a mature buck. Corn has almost no fat content. White oak acorns carry real raw fat. Fat deer survive cold snaps. Fat deer build antler the following year. The acorn is not just food, the acorn is winter survival fuel itself. That is why whitetail pattern on oak ridges long before rifle season. That is why the biggest bucks tend to bed within reach of mast trees. If you made it this far, you already know more about real whitetail. More than most people who spend thousands on food plots every fall. More than most men who sit over corn feeders all November long. Subscribe and share this with someone who values real wood skill. And remember, the full Buried Vault link sits in the description now. Share this with a hunting friend who still buys a feeder every year. Now, stay with me. The next part is the part the industry really hates. So why does almost nobody talk about real mast reading anymore? Why did this simple wood skill disappear from modern deer hunting? The answer sits in the warehouses of the outdoor products industry. The feed corn market in the United States is worth billions yearly. Corn feeders, protein pellets, mineral blocks, and food plot seed. All of it sold to men who already hunt land covered in wild oaks. Men who already own the best whitetail food source on the planet. Men who never learned how to find it because nobody told them to. You cannot sell a man a feeder if he can read the ground himself. You cannot sell a man food plot seed if he knows the oaks feed deer. You cannot sell a trail camera if he reads tracks beside an acorn. The entire gear model depends on hunters feeling blind in the woods. A man who reads Mast is a man who stops buying solutions every fall. So the magazines stopped covering it. The shows stopped teaching it. The ads stopped showing oak ridges. They showed green plots instead. A new generation grew up thinking food plots were how you kill bucks. They never learned the one skill every mountain hunter was born with. You cannot patent a white oak tree. You cannot copyright the ground. You cannot lock away acorn science behind a paywall or a subscription, but you can bury the skill in silence. You can let it fade quietly. You can replace real woodcraft with a product on every store shelf. That is exactly what the outdoor industry did over 50 long years. The mast map did not die. The industry just stopped talking about it. So it had to be mocked, ignored, buried under piles of plastic gear. Here is what to do this fall to bring the mast map back to your woods. Walk your hunting land in late August before the acorn drop begins. Look up at the oak canopies and study the small green acorns forming. Count the caps you can see on the limbs above the main travel routes. Mark the trees showing heavy green load on a paper map of your land. White oak leaves have rounded smooth lobes with no sharp-pointed tips. Red oak leaves have sharp-pointed lobes with bristles on each tip. Learn this difference before the season. It matters in the dark. Return to the same oaks in the second week of September every year. Look on the ground for the first cracked caps and chew to corn shells. Fresh chew marks show ragged edges. Old marks look weathered dark. Scan the leaves around the trunk for fresh deer tracks in dirt. Look for droppings near the base of the heaviest dropping white oaks. A dropping 3 feet from the oak means a deer fed there recently. Count the caps under each oak and rank them from highest to lowest. The oak with the most cracked caps is the oak the herd chose first. That tree becomes the center of the whole morning hunt ahead of you. Set your stand downwind of the heaviest dropping oak on the ridge. Never set directly under the oak. Deer look up. Set 30 yards off. Pick a tree between the oak and the nearest thick bedding cover. That is the funnel. That is where the buck will walk at first light. When the white oaks finish dropping, shift to the nearest red oak. Red oak mass lasts longer and carries the deer through the late cold. A buck feeding on white oaks in October shifts to red oaks later. Follow the mast. Follow the deer. The plot sits empty by December. Calhoun taught his sons this exact cycle over 100 years ago. It still works today on every oak ridge from Vermont down to Alabama. I need to be honest with you about one real limit in this method here. In a weak acorn year, the signal breaks down and deer range far wider. 1 in every 3 or 4 years, the oak crop fails across a region. When that happens, you cannot rely on the Mast map alone for the setup. You have to fall back on water routes, edge travel, and bedding cover. But in a normal acorn year, the Mast map will outwork any food plot. It will outwork any corn feeder you can bolt to a tree on your land. It will outwork any modern trail camera network money can ever buy. Because it was never about the gear, it was about reading the ground. The same ground Ezra Calhoun read by lantern light long ago here. The same ground every serious hunter should read this coming fall. This knowledge did not die. It waited quietly under every oak ridge. It waited for someone to bring the Mast map back into the open air. It waited through 50 years of plastic feeders and green seed bags. It waited through every ad promising a shortcut to better hunting. The shortcut was always under your boots. You stop looking down. Every acorn on the ground now is part of the map the old men drew. Every cracked cap is a signal the industry spent decades burying. Every track beside a white oak is proof the old knowledge still works. If this video made a real difference for you, subscribe and share now. Share it with the man who buys a feeder and still goes home empty. Every share preserves what modern outdoor culture tried hard to bury. The full buried vault link sits right at the top of the description. The next vault opens soon. What is inside is even heavier than this. The forgotten Mast map will kill more mature bucks than any food plot. Walk the oak ridge this fall. Read the ground. Trust the silence here. Trust the old men who walked these woods long before plastic feeders. Trust the pattern written in cracked caps and chewed whitetail shells. The buck is already standing there, waiting for the hunter who looks.